It is obvious that modern energy is one of the key industries, a real foundation for global development, if it works calmly, according to transparent and understandable rules. When deposits are developed and resources are processed, and supplies to the market are uninterrupted, then all this creates a solid foundation for economic growth, the social sphere, for improving the well-being of citizens. Unfortunately, this truism is less and less taken into account by those who have adopted the mechanisms of illegal sanctions, who believe that they can use them to their advantage in the energy sector. What am I talking about? Historically, it turned out that it was in the hands of the West that the main elements of the supporting infrastructure of the global energy market were concentrated. I mean innovative solutions for the extraction of raw materials, logistics, insurance of resource supplies, as well as a payment system for these operations. In general, everything that, along with technology, forms a kind of platform for global energy. Western elites believed that they could block access to these services for those countries that were politically undesirable to them, thus allegedly putting them on the sidelines of progress, but in fact simply squeezing them out of the market. I think that many will agree with me that all these tools are used primarily as tools of unfair competition. The motive is obvious. The West does not want competition because it cannot cope with it. The West often loses in a fair fight. They resort to discrimination, presenting it under the guise of imaginary Euro-Atlantic solidarity, the fight for human rights, and so on. Well, there are many pretexts. But what happens in the end? By blocking access to its platform, the West only spurred the development of alternative solutions, alternative logistics, insurance, international payment systems and technological innovations. Of course, this is all a difficult process. It is difficult for those who are involved in this process. But this process is ongoing. It is ongoing steadily. I would like to emphasize that today these decisions are already largely independent of outside influence, and given that they are gradually being built on a qualitatively new technological basis, they are becoming more effective every day and, what is very important, more widespread, primarily in countries that are gaining momentum and demonstrating high rates of economic development. I have already said more than once, the modern world has entered an era of fundamental and irreversible changes. A multipolar development model is being formed, which is launching a new wave of global growth for the entire 21st century. And this growth will not be concentrated in Europe or North America, of course. The fundamental foundations of the European and American economies are very serious, powerful, and, of course, they are functioning. And they will function. This braking distance will be long, but, nevertheless, the main growth will be concentrated not in Europe and North America, which are gradually losing their positions in the global economy, but in the BRICS countries and in those states that want to join this association, which see prospects in equal interaction taking into account national interests. I have already said this, but in this audience I will repeat it again. These are objective data. These are international data. In 1992, the G7 share in global GDP was 45%, and the BRICS share was only 22%. By the end of 2023, the G7 share had dropped to 30%, and the BRICS share had grown to 36%. And the pace is increasing. The gap is widening. I will note right away. According to international experts, in some BRICS countries, including the People's Republic of China, the Russian Federation, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, economic dynamics will be positive, but relatively moderate. I repeat, this is data from experts, including international experts. But the leaders in growth rates I want to emphasize this, namely in rates, will be the countries of the so-called Global South, where the GDP per capita is still low. The urbanization rate is quite low, and at the same time the birth rate is high. First of all, these are the countries of South and Southeast Asia, as well as Africa, by the way, including Equatorial Guinea, whose president, the esteemed Mr. Teodoro Obiang, is participating in our plenary session. I ask you to welcome him. Thank you. I will repeat. Russia is chairing the BRICS organization this year, and BRICS sees its task in combining economic potentials, creating a space of opportunities for all who are interested in harmonious and mutually beneficial cooperation. I will emphasize, we are talking specifically about mutually beneficial cooperation, that is, in the common interests of our countries and peoples, for states that are already or will become promising growth centers. We intend to form an effective development platform free from negative external interference, including resource, technological, personnel, financial, trade and investment, including the energy sector, as I have already said, which has a decisive influence on the state of the economy and the social sphere. Despite the objective difficulties that are well known to everyone, difficulties actually exist for everyone. We have our own considerable difficulties, nevertheless. Russia remains one of the leading participants in the energy market in the world. Over the past 2.5 years, domestic companies have been able to redirect supplies of oil products, coal, for example. If earlier the share of the Asia-Pacific region in our energy exports was approximately 39%, then by the end of last year it had grown by 1.5 times, and it has already exceeded 60% in general. Friendly countries account for over 90% of Russia's energy exports. At the same time, its physical volume, with the exception of natural gas, this is also clear to specialists, has remained practically at the 2021 level. Russia is expanding the geography and scale of energy cooperation. We are building new routes to dynamically growing, capacious markets, including the countries of the Eurasian Economic Union, the CIS, and Southern Eurasia. Deliveries via the Power of Siberia gas pipeline are increasing. The export of liquefied natural gas continues to grow. Thus, liquefied natural gas from the Russian Arctic has become one of the main cargoes of the Northern Sea route. We will definitely continue to develop our own services and technologies in the field of liquefied gas, create centers for transshipment, storage and trade of liquefied natural gas. We will provide projects with gas transportation facilities and, of course, increase the capacity of our Arctic and Eastern Sea ports, strengthen communications and infrastructure of the Northern Sea route. My Russian colleagues know what I am talking about. They are aware of many problems, of course. This partly hinders the implementation of our plans, but, of course, they will be implemented. In general, we are expanding international transport corridors. By 2030, the volume of transportation along these corridors should increase by at least 1.5 times compared to 2021. In particular, we are developing the eastern sector of railways. When the current year's throughput capacity of the Baikal-Amur main line and the Trans-Siberian Railway was 180 million tons, in 10 years it will increase to 270 million tons, which will allow transporting larger volumes of fuel and energy products and their processed products from our Siberian regions to the markets of the Global South. A separate issue concerns the financial infrastructure, namely payments for Russian exports. Of course, there are some difficulties here. To solve this problem, we are switching to transactions in national currencies, and our partners are extremely interested in this. There are also many problems here. We understand this perfectly well, but we are gradually overcoming these problems. Thus, the share of the ruble in our foreign trade operations is already approaching 40%. From 2021 to 2023, the share of the ruble in payments for exports increased almost threefold, to 39%. And in the first half of this year this figure was already 39.4%. At the same time, within the framework of cooperation with the BRICS countries, we are working on creating our own payment transaction circuit, which will create conditions for efficient and independent servicing of all foreign trade. I will add that energy supplies from Russia allow friendly countries to contain the growth of import prices, ensure their energy security and economic stability. This allows them to compete more successfully in the global market. At the same time, we aim to go further, not to limit cooperation only to the sale of our resources. Russia is ready to strengthen the technological sovereignty of its partners in the energy sector, forming full-fledged scientific and production chains. This is how cooperation in the field of peaceful atoms develops. When Rosatom nuclear power plants are built abroad simultaneously with the training of local personnel, with the training of engineers, workers, managers for new facilities. In fact, we are not just building a station, as Rosatom says. We are creating an industry for our partners, a new industry of energy in the economy. I am confident that such a combination of the intellectual and resource potential of different countries, reaching new frontiers of international cooperation, will open up additional opportunities for our research school, for the development of mechanical engineering, the service sector, and, of course, for the entire Russian energy sector.